Imagine for a moment that you are in court, and you're a defendant in court, and you've been put on trial for your faith, which would happen in lots of places up and down the world. You've been put on trial for your faith, and as happens in a courtroom, what will happen is they bring evidence against the defendant of why they're guilty. And I wonder what would be the evidence against you for your faith? What would be the proof that people would give that you are a follower of Jesus and therefore guilty? It's one of those things it's difficult to maybe think about. Maybe there's some things in your life where you can clearly imagine and clearly remember moments. But a lot of our faith is also very internal, isn't it? So it's hard to think about what would be the evidence in that way. But as I say, this morning we're looking at the practice of witness. And I think it's important as we start looking this morning at this practice of witness, that although this one may come across as much more explicitly about other people, all of the 9 practices that we're looking at are all about other people. Even the practice of Sabbath or fasting, or the ones that seem very much about me, all of these practices are about other people. Because again, it's not just about what these practices, or us doing these practices. That's not our end goal. Our end goal of all of the 9 practices that we're looking at on Sundays is that through doing them, we will spend more time with Jesus, that we will become more like Jesus and who he was. And in turn, in doing so, we will be and do what Jesus did in our world around us. So all of the practices, no matter how for me they seem, that's not the end goal. They're not about you necessarily. They're about forming you into more like Jesus, that we may transform our world, our culture around us as well. And so I wonder, what does it mean for us to be a witness? What does it mean to be a witness? If you were to Google the word witness, you maybe come up with some definitions. One definition that I looked up says, one who gives evidence. And putting it another way, another definition said, somebody who is able to testify to an event taking place. So think back again to that courtroom example, is often where you might hear the word witness. You'll have a witness come to the stand and they give the evidence. I witnessed a crime take place, and now I'm sharing my testimony of that. I'm sharing what I saw happen. Or if you've been married, you've signed your wedding register and you get the lovely photos, and you have to have witnesses to that as well. You have people that said, yeah, I saw their wedding happen. I saw it take place. It definitely happened. And they signed the register along with you. So that's what it means to be a witness, is somebody who has maybe seen an event take place, or somebody who can testify to something that has happened. It comes from the Greek word that we get for it is martus. There it is on the screen there. And it essentially, that kind of then feeds into the word that we then get, the English word martyr, where somebody who is bearing witness to their faith through suffering or death. And many of the early apostles, especially that we read about, the early people who followed Jesus and therefore shared their faith of who Jesus was and what he did, they were martyred for their faith. They bared witness to their faith to the point of death. Thankfully, again, for us in our world today, here where we live at least, that's not so much the case for us. We don't have to experience what that may mean. And so that's what it means to be a witness. But then what does it mean to be a witness for Jesus? That's a different question. Some of Jesus' departing words that he leaves with his followers in Matthew 28 says this: "Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." I don't know about you, but those are some pretty special last words to share with your followers, right? Like, that's some powerful words. That's some stuff there for us to unpack and go, well, what does that mean? How do I do that? What do they mean for us? Well, I think what they mean for us at a basic level is that to be a witness is not an optional extra for those who are particularly keen about their faith. Those who are the natural evangelist type people. You know the type of people that I mean. They go to the supermarket to do their food shopping. And while they're chatting to the cashier and they're packing their bags, the cashier's had their lives transformed and they've become a Christian and there's tears everywhere and their lives magically transformed. All they came in for was a pint of milk. And suddenly the cashier's giving their life to Jesus. Those natural evangelist type people. Or sometimes we palm this off and we say, well, that's for like extroverts. That's for the people who like people. They're people. They get energized by this sort of thing. Like, I'm an introvert. That's not so much for me. I don't need to do that. I think the reality is that it is for all of us, regardless of our personality type, our character type, our background, family of origin, experience, all those things. I think it's for all of us. But I don't know about you. Being honest, it doesn't come that naturally to me. I don't find this all that easy. I definitely don't do that sort of thing where I'm packing up my shopping and suddenly, having that conversation with the cashier. I'm more so kind of like, okay, how can I do this and go home? I'm that kind of a person. I find it scary. I struggle to know to have the right words to say in that moment. It can be really daunting to think, what are they going to say? How are they going to respond? Like, what's going to happen if I do that? But just because it doesn't come naturally to me and I find it scary, that doesn't give me a free pass to get away with not doing it. If I want to experience the life of Jesus, this is a saying we've said throughout these Sundays, you're probably bored of hearing it. You can probably repeat it without me saying it, but if you want to experience the life of Jesus, we have to adopt the lifestyle of Jesus. And unfortunately, when you read about the lifestyle of Jesus, he did not hold back. He was open and very honest about who he was, what he'd come to do, who the Father was. And so I think, in other words, to be a follower of Jesus is to be a witness for Jesus. So the question then is, okay, I'm willing for you to tell me that, okay, this is something for me to do. It comes with being a Christian. How do I do it? I listen to these words from Jesus again. He says, you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in all Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. So it's okay if it doesn't come naturally to you. Part of the idea is that we receive power from the Holy Spirit to enable us to do it. If you don't have the words to say, the Holy Spirit works within us to help us and give us the words to say. It's not about whether it comes naturally to you or not. It's about whether we're open to the Spirit at work in our lives and to share our faith as an outworking of that. The Spirit empowers us to do it. But I think it's important to also address that word power. Because throughout history, I think we've seen that word power can get misused if we're not careful. And it's not so much about our use of power, but the abuse of power. I'm sure you've probably all been in a town centre or a city centre somewhere, and you've experienced that person, the turn or burn, hell and damnation kind of preaching on the street, that you walk past and you just think, oh, it just kind of, it grinds on us a little bit. And at least it does on me, and I have a mixed reaction, because I sort of think, fair play to you. I respect your bravery and your courage and your conviction. But please, can you go about it in another way? Is that really the best way for us to do it? After all, what is that potentially witnessing to? Is that witnessing following Jesus involves hatred and bigotry and judgment and condemnation? Or maybe there's a better way. My wife and I, we were in Las Vegas a couple of years ago, and crazy place to even be in for a start. But we were out there one evening, and there's a guy, big megaphone all over his car, driving up and down the main Las Vegas strip. And just like that kind of turn or burn type stuff, screaming out of his megaphone, out of his car. And it was just like, oh no. Like, who's listening to that? The challenge with that is the danger of that approach is when it's done badly, it comes across as just noise. White noise. Who's listening to that? I love this in Corinthians, where the writer says, if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. Challenge for anybody who sees that next time. Just go up to that person and say, you are a clanging cymbal. That might get you in a little bit of hot water. Who knows? But again, I'm not going to do that. I'm not that brave. But you might be. But who's listening to that kind of way of doing things? Maybe there's a better way to do it. Now, what I don't want you to come away from today saying, well, we shouldn't ever talk about our faith. And I think it can be done in a public setting, in the public square, can be done well. There's examples that it is done well. Loads of people do it very well. Sometimes we just get it a bit wrong. And I think it's about having a more personal, more loving approach to how we go about doing it. Understanding that as witnesses, this is really important, I think, for us to understand that as witnesses of Jesus, we carry the message of Jesus. And what a message that is, an important message we have. Like Emmanuel was saying, our world can sometimes be a bit dark, very dark. We have an amazing message against that, a message of light and hope. But we also carry that message with the character of Christ. So yes, we carry the message of Jesus, but we carry it in the character of Jesus. And one of the most defining characteristics of Jesus was a characteristic of love. Our goal for this practice of witness as a church is we want to be a community of good news in a culture of despair. That's what we want to be, a community of good news in a culture of despair. Again, our world is pretty full of bad news. We don't have to look very far. You just open your phone and it's there. The problem is that bad news sells more, doesn't it? It's more shocking, it's more, The good news doesn't always get so far. Here's one example that maybe drives a whole bunch of emotional responses for us. Maybe that picture brings up a certain reaction in you. Maybe anger. Maybe fear. What is going on in our world? Maybe despair, hopelessness at that picture. And it can be very easy to fall into the trap of just being weighed down by the bad news in our world. But as followers of Jesus, we have something different. We have good news. We have a message of hope. We're in the season of Lent right now, and that means that around the corner is not just, Easter Sunday lunch, but around the corner we have the good news that Jesus is alive, that death does not have the final answer anymore, that we have a message of hope for our world, that there is more to life than what we may be experiencing.